4 times each day, live and in color.
Probably the biggest change at the station, the introduction of the Vancouver Island news.
This has been a News Hour Vancouver Island presentation.
Tragedy at Expo. A 9-year-old Nanaimo girl dies in an accident at the Canada Pavilion. 3 Vancouver Island teenagers are killed in a car accident, while a second crash leaves 1 woman hospitalized. And local MP Pat Crofton breaks Tory party ranks, calling for the resignation of Industry Minister Sinclair Stevens.
Final report with Hudson Mack.
Good evening. 1 week to the day after it opened, there has been a tragic accident at Expo 86.
In tonight's news, the rash of armed robberies continues, but this time the culprit trying to break into the Kmart store in Saanich leaves empty-handed. The children of Nanaimo show they're willing to help Shane Vaudrin as he waits for a liver donor in Pittsburgh. And Navy warships have docked in Vancouver in preparation for the big party in Victoria next week.
Final report, weekend edition with Marisa Antonucci.
Good evening. 1 man is dead following an accident involving a single-engine seaplane in New York.
We'll have SOCRED and NDP nomination results following the National.
CHEK 6 News, weekend edition with Marisa Antonucci.
Good evening. RCMP have confirmed that the SOCRED MLA from Atlin, Al Passerelle, was killed in the crash of a small plane in Dease Lake this weekend.
Speaking of news,
6 News with Mark Jen Brent.
Good evening. The consultation process.
CHEK 6 News with Mark Jen Brent.
Good evening. As a rock band from Victoria helps make legal history. Albums by the local group called Dayglow Abortion.
Today on CHEK 6 News, free at last, the Birmingham 6. Watching your property slip slide away. And yen for a big family.
CHEK 6 News at noon with Lee McKenzie.
Good afternoon. They spent 16 years in prison for crimes they didn't commit.
This is a CHEK 6 News break.
Good evening. Ottawa's new gun control proposal would require all gun owners to register themselves and their weapons by the year 2003.
Like 30 seconds before you go.
I thought you learned that lesson about 3 months ago.
No, but I forgot it.
Okay.
And now I'm back at it again.
Good morning. It is 5:30 on this Thursday morning. Welcome to Wake Up. I'm Jill Kropp.
And I'm Zach, and here's a look outside our Vancouver Tower Cam window. It's chilly this morning.
Tonight on CHEK TV News at 5. Terror in central Saanich. An elderly couple is held at knife point by a pair of home invaders. Plus, Alan Greenspan speaks, and the markets listen and respond. Good evening. Hudson has the night off.
Tonight on CHEK TV Late News. A guilty verdict for a Malahat man. Dr. William Cybers faces the death penalty in Florida. And sitting on top of the world, Mount Washington is the envy of the island. Good evening. Sophie Louis is away tonight.
Tonight on CHEK TV Late News. The end of an era. CHEK TV checks out. Make way for CH. Plus, going hog wild at the 134th Saanich Fair.
Good evening. Don't touch that dial. Don't change the channel because the channel is changing for you. Big changes are coming to your television set as tonight marks the end of an era for CHEK television.
Well, good evening and welcome to CH Weekend News. We have shed our CHEK TV name and, as you can see, are coming to you from the newsroom because our downstairs studio is being completely revamped with a new look. Airborne assaults. Tonight on CH News at 5, police use military muscle in the war on drugs. And the long, dry summer, CH News takes a closer look at our water woes. Good evening and welcome to the first edition of CH News at 5. We have made some big changes around here, and I'm looking forward to showing them to you later in this broadcast.
Tonight on CH News Final, a last farewell, a stirring tribute to a friend and teammate. Plus, a familiar face comes to Vancouver. Bill Clinton takes center stage. Good evening. Sophie Louis is away tonight.
Tonight, live on CH News, stuck in the middle. Government managers under stress. Not budging. Squatters occupy a Victoria building. And pressure mounts on the TC picket line.
Now, CH News with Hudson Mack.
Good evening. Protesters claiming to represent the homeless are continuing at this hour to occupy an empty building in...
This is a CH News break.
Fire has destroyed an elementary school in Langford.
Today on CH News at noon, a grim discovery. A missing plane is found in the waters off Vancouver Island. Where's the beef? It may be heading south of the border again. And one boy's dream to make it big.
Now, CH News at noon with Murray Langdon.
Good afternoon. A heart-wrenching search has ended in the deep waters off of Quadra Island.
A parent's nightmare. An elementary school on fire. Parents unsure where their children are.
I was shaking. Once I heard, I was shaking. It's a scary thing.
Happy Valley Elementary School is gone, razed by a fire this morning. 175 students inside.
At the starting, we thought it was just a smoke machine, but then when we found out that it was a real fire, everyone started panicking.
Thankfully, no one was seriously injured. This is a special edition of CH News.
Good evening. Hours after it started, firefighters are still at the scene of the now destroyed elementary school.
Tonight on CH News, former ministerial aide Dave Bassi in court facing more charges.
Now, CH News with Ed Watson and Sophie Louis.
Good evening. It was 1 year ago next week, police officers swooped down on the BC legislature.
Tonight on CH News at 5, a low level of concern over a high-level meeting.
So I really don't think it poses much of a threat here in Victoria.
But are officials underestimating the threat? What a Vancouver Island photographer was able to unmask.
It makes them all look like, a bunch of rats.
So why were police posing as protesters? And oiling our real estate boom.
We're outdoorsy people, so we're here for the pleasure of the outdoors.
Alberta petrodollars pay for island properties.
CH News at 5 with Julie Nolan.
Good evening. 26 of NATO's highest-ranking officers, including generals from Britain and the U.S., are meeting in downtown.
CH News at 6 with Ed Watson.
Good evening. We have more pictures to show you tonight of the BC Ferry Queen of the North.
Tonight on CHEK News.
The wildfire situation in BC has reached a critical level.
Our province is facing the highest levels of wildfire risk in memory.
Now, Vancouver Island's most watched newscast, CHEK News. Here's Scott Fee.
Good evening. Premier Gordon Campbell says the wildfire risk in this province is at its highest level in recent memory.
CHEK News continues right now with Jennifer Crosby and Scott Fee.
Thanks, Julie. Good evening.
Here's what's making news this hour.
Next on CHEK News. Global food prices are going through the roof.
One more hit and then we have to pass it on.
Tonight we'll show you what this means for you the next time you're in the grocery store.
Bookworms fight to take their library back.
I'm asking you to please find another place to go to.
And I'm asking you to please open up the library.
I don't have that authority.
No, who does?
We'll show you the latest chapter in Greater Victoria's library strike.
And even if you use security settings, your online info may not be safe.
The picture is truly sensitive. Don't put it online.
Tonight we'll introduce you to the man who hacked into Facebook.
From our Vancouver Island newsroom, this is CHEK News. Here are Jennifer Crosby and Scott Fee.
And we begin tonight in Ladysmith, where a standoff is underway right now.
The situation has been underway. It started about 3 this afternoon.
Tonight on CHEK News.
The puck stops here. The Canucks complete day 1 of training camp on the island.
From our Vancouver Island newsroom, this is CHEK News with Scott Fee.
Good evening and thanks for joining us tonight. Victoria Police need your help tonight in the search for a 13-year-old girl. Good evening and welcome to a special live broadcast from the CHEK News parking lot. We're surrounded by hundreds of fans, staff, family on a historic day here at CHEK News. An exciting atmosphere. So great to see so many people out here. We have lots of special guests we're going to be hearing from, and we've got some great stories to show you tonight, reflecting back on 53 years that CHEK has been here on the island serving the community. But first, we actually have some development in the storyline, the drama that's unfolded in the potential closing of CHEK News. Today was the deadline set for CHEK News, and we're going to turn it over briefly now to our general manager, John Pollard.
At this time, with the support of Canwest and everybody at CHEK Television, as well as the CRTC and everybody at the government, we will be on the air tomorrow. We are working to bring this to a great conclusion.
Ferry traffic has been rerouted, and one man is lucky not to have drowned after his truck plummets into Nanaimo Harbor.
CHEK News at noon with Stacey Ross.
Good afternoon. One man is lucky to have escaped drowning after his paving truck went off the trestle and into the water.
Tonight on CHEK News.
Tonight we learn the future of CHEK Television.
I think we've made some history here. There's no question.
To a close.
Now, Vancouver Island's most watched newscast, CHEK News. Here's Scott Fee.
Good evening. Tonight marks the end of a deadline Canwest gave to CHEK employees and local investors to try and hammer out a deal to save CHEK News. The last 40 days have been an incredible ride for viewers, supporters, and staff. Tonight we can tell you that after 53 years of being the #1 station on the island, a deal by the employees and several local investors has been accepted by Canwest. CHEK TV has been sold and is now not only your island's owned, but your island's owned. Bob Kendrick reports.
Tonight on CHEK News.
And another step forward for us here at CHEK Television.
We're the island's own station, and we mean to prove that.
We'll take you behind the scenes.
Now, Vancouver Island's most watched newscast, CHEK News. Here's Stacey Ross.
Good evening, and thanks for joining us on this Monday. It is the beginning of a new era for us here at CHEK Television. We'll have more on that in just a moment, but first to the Olympics.
Tonight on CHEK News.
A plume of smoke puts a chokehold on air travel.
They've canceled all flights. It's like, what? It's like a bad movie.
Grounded. BC passengers are feeling the Icelandic volcano eruption. The HST fight gets serious.
People are just getting frustrated. They feel like the government's dictating to them.
And more whales found dead. What is happening in our waters?
From our Vancouver Island newsroom, this is CHEK News. Here's Tony Parsons.
Good evening. As a thick cloud of volcanic ash still hangs above much of northern Europe, the massive dust cloud is putting a chokehold on air travel as tens of thousands of flights have been cancelled.
From the capital, this is a BC News and Weather Update. Here's Scott V.
Good afternoon. Here's what's making headlines around the province right now. We're going to start with international news, as these are very anxious hours for a number of BC families as they're waiting for word on the fate of their loved ones.
Hey, good morning. It is Thursday, April 18th. I'm Andy Neal with your Morning Check. Well, the federal government said this morning it is extending the deadline to make a decision on the Trans Mountain Pipeline expansion.
Tonight.
Goodbye, Blue.
I've been under that thing on jet skis, and now I've been the last guy over it.
The final vehicle makes its way across Victoria's old Johnson Street Bridge. Sign of trouble.
If he's operating a commercial business, he should be in a commercial area.
Lanceville takes court action against a landowner over this unusual display. And Good Friday fun.
We're just hanging out and enjoying the weather.
The Easter long weekend begins.
Now, CHEK News. Here's Stacey Ross.
Hi there. Thanks very much for being with us on this Good Friday.
Tonight.
Tense standoff. Police swarm a Victoria apartment. An earthquake rattles off of Sydney.
It was felt by a lot of people.
How far away was it felt? And Christmas dinner takes a frightening turn in Nanaimo.
Seeing the flames started to come out of the house, out of the windows.
Now, CHEK News. Here's Tess Van Stratton.
Good evening and thanks for joining us. Did you feel the earth move last night? Many Vancouver Islanders did.
Tonight.
Statue support.
The statue issue, as much as it might have hurt her in the short term, ironically may help her in the long term.
A new poll shows a majority in BC oppose the removal of the John A. Macdonald statue. What impact could that have on Victoria's upcoming election? Diagnosis confirmed.
You don't want to put a long-term dart into the animal because that could open pathways for infection.
Scientists figure out what ails a young southern resident orca, but fear it could be too late. And rain at last.
Cedar, it's not supposed to ever turn yellow. It's getting sick.
There are showers in the island forecast, but a long, hot, dry summer has taken its toll.
Now, CHEK News. Here's Ben O'Hara-Byrne.
Good evening. A new poll shows that a majority of British Columbians and Canadians are opposed to a decision to remove a statue of John A. Macdonald from in front of Victoria City Hall.
Good morning, and thanks for tuning in to this edition of Morning Check, brought to you by Bathfitter here on Vancouver Island. I'm Graham Cox, and here's what's making headlines to start this Thursday, October 24th.
Today's check-in is brought to you by Bathfitter here on Vancouver Island.
Tonight on CHEK News.
Murder verdict.
There was more than one person murdered, and the murders were part of a common scheme or plan or the result of a single act of the person. Answer, yes.
A Washington jury rules in the killing of a young Saanich couple 30 years ago. Cause of the fire. Investigators tell us more about the blaze that destroyed the historic Plaza Hotel. And Broken Bridge. It's brand new. It cost $105 million to build, and it got stuck. We'll tell you why.
Live from Vancouver Island, here's Stacey Ross.
Hello, thanks very much for being here. A jury in Washington state has now found 56-year-old William Talbot guilty of the murders of Jay Cook and Tanya Van Cuylenburg. Hello there. We begin with breaking news tonight. One of Vancouver Island's longest running events, the largest annual public gathering of the year in the BC capital, has fallen victim to the COVID-19 outbreak. The 122nd Island Farms Victoria Day Parade, scheduled for May 18th, has been cancelled.
Tonight on CHEK News.
Tragedy on the mountain.
There's no getting around.
Grief after the death of a well-known Vancouver Island businessman. On strike.
We'll be on strike one day longer than they'll be able to take it.
Western Forest Products workers vow to stay off the job as long as it takes. We'll tell you what they want. And the day after.
Perhaps the police were able to see a little bit more into the crowd.
This year's Canada Day police numbers may surprise you.
Live from Vancouver Island, here's Tess Van Stratton.
Good evening and thanks for joining us. It was a tragedy that shook the community of Port Alberni to its core.
Tonight on CHEK News.
A deadly drop.
I can't even fathom it.
An SUV makes a fatal 250-foot fall. Chronic understaffing and ongoing complaints. What's going on inside Island senior homes?
My mom would be absolutely appalled.
And Black Friday chaos on the island, where the biggest lineups are in parking. You can cross.
Parking is a complete nightmare.
Live from Vancouver Island, here's Andy Neal.
Good evening and thanks for joining us. A crash on a logging road near Port Alberni has claimed the life of one man.
You're a bunch of scabs,
when it happens on the island.
I am terrified because there's some...
When it affects your world.
We're here reporting live on Blanchard Street where Victoria...
When you need to know, now.
The worst thing you can do is turn and run.
When you can't get it anywhere else. You turn to the news that's close to home.
The RCMP in Sydney are investigating an explosives...
Immediate.
This next report gives us a story that comes...
Award-winning.
And the good news tonight is that...
Local. CHEK 6. News that hits close to home.